The talking pumpkin. The crisp morning air was cool against Lena's skin as she tiptoed through the backyard, her bare feet lightly brushing the damp grass. The soft, wet leaves rustled under her feet as she crept past the flower bed. It was a peaceful morning, the sky streaked with the first hints of sunrise. Everything seemed perfectly normal, until she noticed the strange glow flickering near the edge of the path. It was a soft, flickering light, unlike anything she had ever seen before. Lena paused, her heart picking up its pace. She squinted through the early morning haze, and there it was, an enormous pumpkin sitting squarely in the middle of the path. It wasn't just any pumpkin, though. Its orange skin was smooth and polished, glowing with a strange light. Carved into its surface were two gleaming eyes and a jagged grin that looked like it had been etched by a wild hand. Who put this here? Lena whispered to herself, confused and a little uneasy. As she stepped closer, the pumpkin's grin seemed to widen. Then, to her shock, a low, raspy voice answered. I did. Lena jumped back, her pulse quickening in an instant. Pumpkins don't talk, she stammered, her voice trembling slightly. The pumpkin's eyes flickered and gleamed brighter. I do. It chuckled, its voice deep and oddly amused. The glow around it pulsed rhythmically, casting a strange light over the backyard. And I know your secret. Lena swallowed, her throat dry. What secret? Her curiosity mixed with a growing sense of dread. She wasn't sure what she was dealing with, but she was starting to feel that this was no ordinary pumpkin. The pumpkin's carved mouth stretched wider, its jagged grin almost mocking. You took the last piece of pie from the kitchen, it said, its tone almost playful, but with a bite of judgment. Lena's breath caught in her throat. Her mind raced back to the night before. She had snuck into the kitchen after everyone had gone to bed, her eyes gleaming with hunger. The pie had been left there, still warm, the last slice sitting temptingly on the plate. It had been a small indulgence, but now, hearing the pumpkin's words, guilt gnawed at her insides. How? How do you know that? She gasped, her voice barely a whisper. The pumpkin's voice came again, low and knowing. I see everything. It whispered, its glowing eyes narrowing as it seemed to stare straight into her soul. Even the time you broke your mom's vase and blamed the cat. Lena froze, her body tense. Her chest tightened, and her heart skipped a beat. The vase. That was a secret she hadn't told anyone. When she had knocked it off the shelf, she'd panicked. And when her mom had asked what happened, Lena had been quick to blame the cat. No one had suspected otherwise, but the guilt had always eaten at her. Are you a ghost? Lena managed to whisper, her words shaking as she stepped back, eyes wide in disbelief. A deep chuckle rumbled from the pumpkin, its grin widening further, its glow intensifying. Maybe, it said, the words stretching out like a secret, a riddle. Or maybe something else entirely. Lena's thoughts spun faster. A talking pumpkin? A ghost? She wasn't sure what to believe, but she had to know more. She felt the urge to press further, to get to the heart of this strange encounter. If you know everything, she said, her voice steadier now, then tell me, what am I thinking right now? The pumpkin dimmed slightly, the glow flickering as if it were considering her question. For a moment, the silence between them felt thick, like the air itself was holding its breath. Then, with a sudden surge, the jagged grin of the pumpkin twisted into a smirk. You're wondering if smashing me will make me stop talking, the pumpkin said smugly, its voice laced with amusement. Lena's breath hitched. She hadn't said a word, hadn't even voiced the thought. Yet the pumpkin knew exactly what she was thinking. She was taken aback, her mind reeling. Could it really read her thoughts? Could it really know everything? She swallowed, trying to regain some control. The idea of smashing the pumpkin, of destroying it to end this strange conversation, had crossed her mind. But that seemed too easy. But that wouldn't be nice, she muttered to herself, more to reassure herself than anything else. The pumpkin's voice dropped to a softer, more coaxing tone. Besides, it purred, I only tell little secrets, unless you make me mad. Lena shivered at the pumpkin's words, a cold wind sweeping across the yard. She instinctively wrapped her arms around herself, feeling a chill run through her. What happens if I make you mad? She asked, her voice low and cautious. The pumpkin's glow flickered wildly, its grin stretching farther, almost unnaturally wide. You don't want to know? It hissed, its voice sharp, like a warning. Lena's heart pounded in her chest. She took a tentative step back, then another, the fear bubbling inside her. She couldn't explain it, but she felt as though she were standing on the edge of something unknown and dangerous. Before she could make a decision, her instincts kicked in. She turned on her heel and bolted toward the house, her feet pounding on the path as she ran. Behind her, the pumpkin's laughter echoed, low and unsettling, growing fainter and fainter as she slammed the door shut behind her. The morning light filtered through the curtains, warm and inviting, bringing with it a sense of normalcy. Lena stretched and rubbed her eyes, relieved to wake up in the comfort of her bed. She had tossed and turned all night, the strange encounter with the talking pumpkin lingering in her mind like an unshakable nightmare. She couldn't understand it, couldn't make sense of it. Was it a dream? Was it real? She sat up and glanced toward the window, the cool morning light streaming through the glass. The backyard was peaceful, the flowers in the flower bed still fresh with dew. She hesitated for a moment, wondering if the pumpkin would still be there. Taking a deep breath, Lena walked to the back door. Slowly, she pulled it open and stepped outside. To her surprise, the pumpkin was gone. No glowing eyes, no jagged grin. Nothing. The path was empty. It was as though the strange encounter had never happened. Lena's heart slowed, and a sense of relief washed over her. She was just about to turn back toward the house when something caught her eye. Scattered across the garden, nestled in the grass, were dozens of tiny pumpkin seeds. They gleamed faintly in the morning sun, some of them still slick with the remnants of dew. Lena crouched down, her fingers brushing over them, feeling the coolness of the seeds against her skin. Her mind raced. Could these seeds be from the pumpkin? Had it left them behind for her to find? What did they mean? A thought crossed her mind, a strange, almost silly thought, but one she couldn't shake. Maybe, Lena whispered to herself, maybe it wasn't all bad. Lena stood up, her fingers still lingering on the seeds. She looked around the yard, a smile tugging at her lips. The pumpkin had been strange, frightening even, but it hadn't truly harmed her. In fact, it had shared its secrets with her, secrets no one else could know. And while those secrets had unsettled her, they hadn't been dangerous. They had simply been reminders of the little things, small truths that everyone carried, even if they were uncomfortable. As she knelt down and gently cupped the seeds in her palm, Lena had an idea. A small, mischievous idea that felt surprisingly right. She would plant them. She would plant them in the garden, right where the pumpkin had been, and let them grow. Maybe the pumpkin had been trying to teach her something. Something about honesty, about the importance of owning up to the small things. After all, the pumpkin had never meant to hurt her. It had only shown her the way. With a smile, Lena began to plant the seeds, one by one, in the rich soil of the garden. She knew that in time, something new would grow, something beautiful, something that she could nurture with care. As the last seed was planted, Lena stood up, feeling a sense of peace settle over her. The whispering pumpkin had left her with more than just a memory. It had left her with a lesson. Even the smallest things, like a pumpkin, or a secret, or a simple mistake, could grow into something much more meaningful. And as she stood there, the sun shining down on her garden, Lena felt a warmth inside her heart. She had faced her fear, and she had learned from it. Now, the garden was hers to cultivate, and in it, she could see the potential for something beautiful to bloom. From that day on, Lena would tend to her garden with a new perspective. And as the pumpkins began to sprout and grow, she couldn't help but smile at the memory of the whispering pumpkin, knowing that, in the end, everything had turned out for the best.